Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Higginbotham, and I have the honor of working as the CEO of the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We are gathered here at the state capitol to commemorate October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And tonight we recognize the hard work of domestic violence advocates. We honor the resiliency and hope of survivors and remember the lives lost to domestic violence in Pennsylvania last year. I want to take a moment to welcome and thank our advocates, special guests, and legislators for joining us. Thank you all very much. Domestic violence is a public health issue of epidemic proportions. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, and nearly half of all LGBTQ plus people will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Far too often, this abuse becomes deadly. Last year, 104 Pennsylvanians lost their lives to domestic violence, including 62 women and 42 men. 8 of those victims were children or teens. Further, the vast majority, 67%, were killed with firearms. These high rates of domestic violence are not private individual problems. They're community problems that require community solutions. Everyone knows someone impacted by domestic violence, and everyone here today is united with us in our mission to end domestic violence and create safe, healthy communities for all Pennsylvanians. PCADV and its network of 59 domestic violence programs work every day to improve the lives of victims and survivors of domestic violence in Pennsylvania. Our commitment is to ensure that as many people as possible, especially those from typically underrepresented groups, have access to information and services that help them find safety, obtain justice, and build lives free of abuse. One critical component necessary for survivors to find safety and rebuild their lives is financial security and independence. Financial abuse occurs in 99% of abusive relationships and is the #1 reason survivors stay in or return to abusive situations. Our Economic Justice Initiative focuses on providing advocates with the tools and resources to help survivors access education, develop financial skills, repair credit, build savings, and gain meaningful employment. Another essential issue for survivors is access to safe, affordable housing. Domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness for women and their children. And finding stable and affordable housing is crucial to our survivors' ability to escape an abusive environment and to build an independent life, because survivors who cannot maintain their housing are highly vulnerable to return to their abusers. No victim of domestic violence should have to choose between homelessness and staying in an abusive home. As the oldest domestic violence coalition in the United States, PCADV has supported its member programs in providing direct services to survivors for nearly 50 years. The coalition was founded with the primary vision that anyone fleeing violence needs safe and secure housing in their own community, and PCADV and its member programs continue this critically important work today. Addressing issues like housing and economic justice will not only help people currently experiencing domestic violence, it will also help prevent more people from experiencing it in the future. And prevention is so important. If communities face multiple challenges like low-paying jobs, few healthcare options, and a lack of affordable housing, people in those communities can be more vulnerable to domestic violence. When we come together as a community to address these risk factors, like ensuring that everyone has an affordable place to live, then people will be less likely to experience domestic violence in the first place. The sheer number of victims we are here to remember this evening means we still have much work to do, work that will require more resources. But I know that prevention is possible, and that progress is achievable with the collective efforts and sustained support of everyone here today. Now, it's a great honor to introduce our first speaker tonight, Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis. He is the youngest lieutenant governor in the country and the first Black lieutenant governor in Commonwealth history. Inspired by the history makers who came before, Davis is determined to motivate a new generation of public service to break even more barriers. Davis's path to the second highest office in the Commonwealth started in McKeesport, a former steel town in western Pennsylvania. Growing up, he watched his mom, a hairdresser for more than 40 years, juggle raising a family and putting food on the table. And he watched his dad work hard as a union bus driver. At the age of 16, Davis was living in McKeesport when gun violence came to their doorstep. After a shooting in his neighborhood, he got involved in his community and started a youth advisory council with the mayor and a youth gun violence prevention program at his school. Davis went on to study political science at the University of Pittsburgh, becoming a first-generation college graduate and then pursuing a career in public service. He then returned to McKeesport to work for the Allegheny County Executive. And in that role, he helped create the first violence prevention office within the Allegheny Department of Health. In 2018, Davis successfully ran for the State House of Representatives, becoming the first African American to represent his legislative district. As Lieutenant Governor, Davis presides over the Pennsylvania Senate, chairs the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons, leads the local government advisory committee, and serves on the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Council. Governor Josh Shapiro has also appointed Davis to chair the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, a crucial partner in PCADV's work to end domestic violence. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Governor Davis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence for organizing today's event, and to the lawmakers and other officials who are standing here today. Thank you to the survivors who are lifting up your voices and turning your pain into purpose. Those who are closest to the pain should be closest to the power. I'm proud to serve as our Commonwealth's first Black Lieutenant Governor. I'm even prouder to serve as Second Lady Blair Holmes Davis's husband and as dad to our new baby Harper, who is now 1 month old. Being a new father is shaping my perspective in new ways. Every single person who we will commemorate today was a beloved son or daughter. No parent should ever have to bury a child. That pain is unthinkable, and I can't even imagine it. Some of you may know this, but gun violence is the issue that brought me to public service when I was 15 years old, and it came to my neighborhood. I decided to take action and get involved in my community, which ultimately led me to being here today. No matter what you look like or where you live, every Pennsylvanian deserves to be safe and feel safe in their community. Kids should be safe at school, folks should feel safe walking down the street, and everyone should be safe and supported in their family and intimate relationships. We can't thrive as a Commonwealth if we're not meeting that basic need for safety and security. Unfortunately, we know that it often takes multiple times for a victim of domestic violence to leave their perpetrator. The reasons why people stay are often complex. Sometimes there are children involved. Sometimes there's economic abuse that prevents someone from having the resources to leave. And sometimes victims stay because it seems safer to continue to endure the abuse. That's a completely rational response. The most dangerous time for many victims is when they make the decision to finally leave. We must do more to listen to and support victims of domestic violence. It will keep our community safer. How many times have we heard this story in the wake of a mass shooting? Too often we hear about how the perpetrator was first violent to the people they were closest to, family members and intimate partners. We all pay a price when we refuse to heed the warnings of those who are brutalized and abused by the people who claim to love them. Making our Commonwealth safer is my #1 priority as your Lieutenant Governor and as the chairman of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and a top priority of the Shapiro-Davis administration. Our administration's budget puts more resources into violence prevention and intervention and leans into supporting community-based solutions. But it's not just about making investments. It's about being smart and innovative with those investments. It's why we are investing $1 million in grant funding to conduct a needs assessment and identify gaps in support for Pennsylvanians who are victims of gun violence. We must not leave any community behind. We must not leave any victim behind. Every victim, every family member who has lost a loved one to gun violence should receive the support and the services that they deserve and are entitled to. At the end of the day, the governor and I believe firmly that government can and should be a force for good in our lives, and that we can make our communities safer and do big things if we're willing to work together. Whether you're a Democratic lawmaker from Philadelphia or a Republican legislator from southwestern Pennsylvania, this issue impacts your community. It's on all of us to come together to stop domestic violence, to protect victims and survivors. Thank you for inviting me here today, and remember those lives we have lost and honor their memories. May their memories be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Davis. We appreciate you being here and appreciate your support. Now, our second featured speaker this evening is Dr. Valerie Arkush, Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. Before entering public service, the Secretary practiced medicine as an obstetric anesthesiologist. Her experience working in Philadelphia hospitals showed her the inherent link between a person's living environment and the impacts of generational poverty on health and well-being. This inspired her to pursue further education in public health to address not just the in-the-moment challenges a person faces when they present at a doctor's office or an emergency room, but also the community-level barriers that affect health outcomes like domestic violence. Upon obtaining her Master's of Public Health in 2007, Dr. Arkush became deeply engaged in the effort to achieve comprehensive healthcare reform. She led the National Physicians Alliance, a national nonprofit organization of physicians putting their patients before profits, and joined a broad-based national coalition for reform. As former chair of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners, she applied her experience in healthcare to strengthen services for citizens, including vulnerable populations like children, seniors, people with disabilities, veterans, and people affected by the opioid crisis. Recognizing the need for a strong, supported workforce in executing these goals, she instituted a $15 minimum wage and gender-neutral paid parental leave for Montgomery County employees. The Secretary is also a staunch advocate for maternal health and previously served on the Pennsylvania Maternal Mortality Review Committee. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Arkush.
Good evening, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with all of you this evening to recognize and remember those that we have lost and those who have survived domestic violence. Susan, I want to thank you so much for that very, very kind introduction, and for all you and the PA Coalition Against Domestic Violence do to support survivors every single day. You are a champion for this critical work to support people who are in need of life-saving support, safety, and stability. And tonight, I join you in support of your work to end domestic violence, to support survivors, and to remember those we have lost to this scourge. Too many people every day, women, men, non-binary people, people of all ages, experiences, and socioeconomic backgrounds, do not feel safe in their own homes. This is unacceptable. These threats can take many forms: physical violence, emotional manipulation and abuse, financial exploitation, intimate partner violence, and sadly, it often begins from a place of trust and a relationship or bond between the abuser and their victim or victims. But no matter what your experience, how it began, how many times it occurred, or if you hope it will be an isolated incident, your experience matters. Your safety matters. Your health matters. Your future matters. And most importantly, your life matters. Domestic violence is more than just an individual threat to health and safety. The trauma experienced by domestic violence survivors persists and impact a survivor's physical and emotional health and quality of life, even once they are in a place of safety. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, children who grow up in an abusive environment or witness domestic abuse are more likely to experience chronic physical or mental illness conditions that worsen health outcomes across their lifespan. This does not have to be a reality that we accept. We must commit to support survivors, their children, and their loved ones as they build a life safe and separate from their abuser, and support them as they process and navigate the impacts of abuse, something PCADV and its partners are doing every single day. It's critical that we understand the signs of abuse so we can look out for ourselves and our loved ones and be a resource to those in need. But this work can't only take place in response to violence. Prevention and education are essential to building a culture that speaks fearlessly about healthy, respectful relationship dynamics, honest communication, emotions we're dealing with, and stressors we face at all points of life, and how to have those difficult conversations we may otherwise avoid, but the ones that can fester and strain relationships. We must build supportive communities that uplift and rally support around people so that they can overcome difficult situations rather than isolating them or creating barriers. Most importantly, we must never stigmatize or blame the victims of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a public health problem with intergenerational consequences that threaten the safety and common good of all communities, all communities. When we approach domestic violence this way, we can embed prevention, support, and empowerment that help us all play an active role in that public health response. You've heard statistics from Susan tonight that are far too high. But if there's one thing that we must understand from these numbers, this violence is common. This violence is dangerous. And most importantly, this violence is not your fault. Tonight, we honor survivors and the lives lost to domestic violence. Tomorrow and every day after, we must remember what each of us can do to look out for those in our lives who are or may be impacted and be an advocate for prevention in our communities. The Department of Human Services is proud to support the work of PCADV and its partner agencies around Pennsylvania. These folks do heroic, life-saving work every day to support and empower people experiencing domestic violence. To anyone hearing this and questioning whether their experience is considered violence or abuse, I urge you to talk to someone you trust or contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. And of course, we have many resources across the Commonwealth as well. Your life, your health, and your future are too valuable. Please do not carry this on your own. You are not alone. There are communities of people ready to stand with you and support you. Thank you again for inviting me to join with you tonight.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Arkush. We appreciate your time and your commitment to doing something about domestic violence. Our next guests tonight are Representative Cheryl Delosier, Representative Carol Hill Evans, and Senator Amanda Cappelletti. Together with Senator Bartolotta, who could not be here with us tonight, they led a bipartisan effort to acknowledge October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Pennsylvania through resolutions in both the House and the Senate. Their leadership is an exceptional example of the collaborative efforts required to tackle the profound issue of domestic violence in Pennsylvania. Representative Cheryl Delosier is serving her 8th two-year term in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, representing part of Cumberland County. She was elected the caucus administrator for the 2023-24 legislative session. Representative Delosier is a skilled and proven legislator who has the ability to reach across the aisle, prioritizing people over politics, as demonstrated by her leadership of the bipartisan Clean Slate expansion. She's an active community member volunteering to help victims of rape, domestic violence, and Special Olympics. Representative Carol Hill Evans was elected to the state legislature in 2016 to represent part of York County. She is a native of New York City and previously served for 9 years on the New York City Council as both vice president and president. Representative Hill Evans is chair of the Central Pennsylvania delegation, which serves Harrisburg, Lancaster, York, Reading, and State College. She is also a member of the Early Education, Women's Health, and LGBTQ plus Equality Caucuses, and the co-chair of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus. Welcome, Representative Delosier and Representative Hill Evans.
Greetings. I am Representative Carol Hill Evans, and I'm very happy to be here as one of the co-prime sponsors of our House Resolution 221, which recognizes the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. More prevalent than most realize, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetimes. According to the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which you heard from earlier, more than 10 million people are abused each year here in the United States. Intimate partner violence burdens the Pennsylvania economy up to $156 billion over a lifetime. Domestic violence affects individuals from all racial, ethnic, religious, educational, social, and economic backgrounds, and is a pattern of abuse behavior used to establish power and control over an intimate partner. Domestic violence often causes emotional harm to victims, but not only to victims, to their children and their family members as well. As a legislative body, it is imperative that we lend our voices to raise awareness of domestic violence in support of Pennsylvanians across the entire Commonwealth, including the 112 Pennsylvanians who died from domestic violence incidents in the year 2022. By doing so, we can be part of the national conversation about domestic violence and contribute to changing the narrative on this overshadowed but important topic. Thank you for allowing me to say just a few words, and please know that you're in my heart and in my prayers for recovery for those of you who have been victims of domestic violence.
Ooh, I like the light. Good evening, everyone. And I just want to say, we just came off the floor, so I just want to say thank you to our fellow some of our House members that were able to come out when we finish. So sorry to be a little late. We were still on the floor. First off, I just want to say that to start this off, I'm very glad to partner with Representative Hill Evans with this resolution, but I'm sad to be here again. And that's where we talk about a lot of times when we have these types of issues. We're frustrated to think that there's domestic violence victims that are out there that still feel alone and feel that they are on their own, and they may not have any options. For over a decade, as we've introduced these resolutions, the ability for us to recognize this month and to recognize the strength of victims and their survivors. This year, partnering with Representative Hill Evans, I look forward to a vote on the resolution honoring October and making sure that we ask many questions. In Pennsylvania, as the statistics have been given, 104 victims lost their lives to domestic violence. It was men, women, children, It was all races, all religions. It was anybody in our community. It didn't matter economic level. It was, there is no stereotype when it comes to domestic violence. Nationwide, more than 1 million people have been abused in the U.S. each year. And 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 men and women end up becoming victims in this area, on this issue. In addition to the resolution, having worked with domestic violence within my local area, I'm proud each year to be able to bring the Red Lady with Cumberland Perry Domestic Violence Services here to the Capitol, and she is in our rotunda. And what does that Red Lady and that Silent Witness Project do? That Silent Witness Project each year brings attention to the fact it's a life-size figurine of a woman who was a victim and a story of how each and every victim's story is different. And each and every victim has a story to tell, and they know how lonely it is when they think they are the only ones. Each year we do this, and we pay attention to October and domestic violence. The question that remains is, what do we do the other 11 months of the year? We need, as the saying goes, when you see something, say something. When you see the bruise, ask. When you see someone isolating, ask. When you hear a demeaning comment or threats of someone, ask. You may say, what do I ask? Ask, can I help you? Are you okay? Do you feel safe? Do you need a crisis center or shelter? Ask the question, make sure that they know they are not alone. You never know what small act of interest, kindness, or compassion could be someone's life raft. There's a quote by a trauma specialist that says, trauma creates change you don't choose. Healing is about creating the change you do choose. As we talk about those suffering from abuse, they need to know they're not alone, that there is help. And the bottom line is that we are there for any victim of crime to go from being a victim to being a survivor. Thank you for letting us be a part.
Great. Thank you both so much. We appreciate your support and your advocacy on behalf of survivors. Now we will hear from Senator Amanda Cappelletti. Senator Cappelletti represents parts of Montgomery and Delaware counties. She was a member of the first group awarded the William Penn Fellowship through the governor's office. First as an advocate for children at the Office of Child Development and Early Learning, and then at the Department of Human Services as a policy specialist tracking legislation. She also now serves as the co-chair of the Pennsylvania Women's Health Caucus and fights for accessible and affordable health care, including reproductive health care for all Pennsylvanians. Please join me in welcoming Senator Cappelletti.
Good evening, everyone. As you heard, I'm Senator Amanda Cappelletti. I represent parts of Delaware and Montgomery counties. Before I get into my remarks, I just want to acknowledge that I have some colleagues here, Senator Nikhil Saval from Philadelphia and Senator Vincent Hughes from parts of Philadelphia and Montgomery counties. I want to thank them for being never-ending advocates for issues like this and always being willing to stand with me when I'm speaking out on important topics. I'm thankful to be here today amongst survivors, advocates, and as I mentioned, other lawmakers and wonderful friends from the House as well. It's unfortunate but true that domestic violence has affected all of our lives in some shape or form. Because as you've heard, regardless of age, sex, religion, or ethnic background, abuse can and does happen to anyone. And it can happen at any point in any relationship. Intimate partner violence thrives when we are silent about it. To make progress, survivors need to know that they are not alone, nor are they isolated, because there are support systems in place to help people process and heal what they have gone through. I'm incredibly proud to have organizations like the Laurel House, Women's Center of Montgomery County, Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County, and the Women's Resource Center of Delaware County, all available in my district to serve and help. And I thank them for the work that they do to endlessly support our community and its members. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is held throughout the month of October, as we've talked about, as a way to bring advocates across the nation to get together to end domestic violence. We use this time to connect with one another in a true sense of unity to end domestic violence for good and to celebrate survivors while honoring those who have been lost. And I'm grateful that we're taking the space this evening to do just that. I worked across the aisle on this resolution to name October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month with Senator Camera Bartolotta, because we both recognize that Pennsylvanians and people across the world deserve healthy, happy, and safe lives free from abuse. And Senator Camera Bartolotta has been a leader on this issue long before I entered the Senate, and I appreciate her willingness to work with me. This resolution gives all of the Senate members an opportunity to sign on in a show of support and demonstrate where they stand on this issue. But make no mistake, there is absolutely so much more we can be doing to ensure that we are proactive about stopping domestic violence and to support the victims. We need to increase funding to support programs that provide prevention and support. Thank you. Currently, the domestic violence prevention and support programs lack the necessary funding they need to do their work in Pennsylvania because I think, as many of you know, there's been a drastic increase in domestic violence, especially since the pandemic hit us in 2020. Our budget reflects our priorities, and I believe that Pennsylvania needs to realign what it's spending with our values. We believe in a world free from domestic violence. Thank you. We believe in a world free from domestic violence, but we actually need to do the work and fund the programs that will make this a reality for every citizen of Pennsylvania. And in that vein, I hope we all think compassionately about what we can be doing to help support survivors, encourage advocates, end domestic violence in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So thank you for being here this evening, allowing me the chance to join you in this advocacy, and I'll end with the promise that I will continue to fight to ensure that Pennsylvania's budget is inclusive of increased spending for these programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Cappelletti. We appreciate you. Next, I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Representative Latasha Mays, who represents part of Allegheny County. Representative Mays is a nationally recognized leader in the field of reproductive justice, human rights, and leadership development for Black women and girls. She was a leader in the bipartisan effort to increase funding for domestic violence services in FY 23-24 and continues to be a champion for survivors and the advocates that serve them. Please join me in welcoming Representative Mays.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be in this space, and I'm honored to be here with my colleagues from both the House and the Senate. I bring you greetings from the 24th Legislative District in the city of Pittsburgh in Allegheny County. And the many decades I've lived in Pittsburgh, although I'm originally from West Philadelphia, I knew our Senator Hughes would appreciate my mentioning Philadelphia. But understanding the important network that the coalition has created to provide vital resources to victims and survivors of domestic violence. I'm reminded of my own experience supporting victims and survivors in their worst and lowest moments. I remember wanting to be a family lawyer and then meeting a woman and her child, and they were in a situation where they were trying to flee a domestic abuse situation. And I remember the resources and the offerings, what we could do for them were so woeful and did not help them in the ways that so many victims and survivors need. I remember my time at the Center for Victims as a community outreach educator and understanding how critical the services are that your organizations and agencies provide, not 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but every day and every hour of every week. I remember when I was leaving the Center for Victims, there were 2 people who stayed to answer our hotline, our emergency hotline, so that when a victim called, there was someone who would and could answer. And so that is why I work with my colleague from Allegheny County, Representative Natalie Mihalik, to be able to secure bipartisan support to increase the line item in the budget. Because we can't say we want to support survivors and don't increase the budget over many years as we have done. That's disingenuous. Then we are just saying words that are empty and hollow versus putting money where our mouth is. And so while we were not successful at this point in increasing the budget, as my colleague, the Senator Capoletti said, that we are going to continue to fight for those increases, because we know that in every agency, you're holding on by a thread. And this is not a new situation. I worked at the Center for Victims in 2008, and it was the same thing, piecing together money and dollars and resources to do some of the most important work that is happening in this Commonwealth. We can't be okay with that, and we can't accept that as legislators, as advocates, and those who want to actually pour resources into victims and survivors. Because we know that the trauma that remains impacts our entire community. So when we invest in the resources that survivors need, we're investing in our communities, we're investing in the next generations, we're investing in the future. And so that is my commitment to you, to keep working and to keep fighting. I have circulated a co-sponsorship memo around paid days off from work when you may have to go file protection from abuse order, or that you may need to help your friend or your family member or someone you love or care about, that you're able to take that time off and you're not punished by needing to be away from work to do something that could save someone's life. So I'll look forward to working with the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'll look forward to working with my colleagues in both the House and the Senate, and to keep fighting for survivors always, because no matter who you are or where you live in this Commonwealth, abuse is abuse is abuse. And we're going to fight back and to make sure that victims and survivors have the resources that they need in this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Mays. Now, our next guest, Senator Vincent Hughes, has served the Commonwealth as a member of the Pennsylvania Senate for more than 20 years, representing parts of Montgomery and Philadelphia counties. As a key member of the Senate's Democratic leadership team, Senator Hughes is a champion for major policy issues such as expanding health care for low-income workers, raising the minimum wage, defending the right to vote, fighting for increased funding for public education, and rebuilding the state's distressed communities. As a Democratic chairman of the State Appropriations Committee, Senator Hughes holds a major role in developing Pennsylvania's annual budget. He is also a champion of safe, affordable housing and the lead sponsor of SB 670, which would establish the Safe Housing Trust Fund. This fund would serve as a cornerstone to both prevent domestic violence and help survivors obtain safety and autonomy. Please join me in welcoming Senator Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Your hands are freezing. I know. Your hands are freezing. Her hands are freezing. All right? So, if you know this building, today was one of those days, right? I'm looking at my colleagues, my House members, my Senate colleagues. Today was one of those days where this building was full of democracy. People advocating for their issues, people advocating for their rights, people advocating for resources to deal with a particular issue that they had. And they were all from every corner of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, all of them. And today was one of those busy days. And usually if there's a busy day, there's a busy evening. There's a lot of meetings and receptions and events and conversations happening all across the city of Harrisburg with legislators and folks still continuing to advocate. But we are here. We are here for those individuals, mostly women, who at some point during this day are going through hell. Are going through hell. And if that woman is going through hell, there's probably a child somewhere closely attached to them who's watching it and maybe going through the same hell as well. We are here for them. It's getting chilly. It's getting a little brisk. I understand that. And there's a baseball game later on this evening. And I understand that that's important as well. But we are here for those whose voices are being silenced right now because of violence. And while we work to eliminate zero tolerance for domestic violence, while we do that work, we must understand as well the reality of violence and how it deals with the issue of housing. When someone is escaping, when someone has the courage or the opportunity to escape a violent situation, they must have a place to go. They must have somewhere to go. Some place that they can call home, that they can catch their breath, they can get their wits about them, and also where they can protect their children. Because as I said, and as I think we all know, if a woman is trying to escape, there's probably a child close to them. Some numbers. Approximately 50% of all homeless women report domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness. I'm going to say that again. Approximately 50% of all homeless women report domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness. Last year, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence saw 166 unmet victim requests for emergency shelter in a single 24-hour period. A single 24-hour period, 166 unmet requests for emergency shelter. In 2022 in Philadelphia, Women Against Abuse documented 1,177 unmet requests for shelter because Women Against Abuse's 200 safe haven beds were already full. So that's why we introduced the legislation that was referred to earlier, Senate Bill 670, which would establish a safe housing trust fund to benefit victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, human trafficking, and stalking. Now, what I want to say to folks, this bill and this concept is within our reach. It can happen if we advocate, like we're doing tonight, and like we will do on the days going forward. Why is it possible? Money is no longer an object in Pennsylvania. Money is no longer an issue that can stop good things from coming into reality. We've heard for years, well, we can't get it done because there's no money. We can't get it done because there's no resources. We can't get it done because the budget is tight and it's not enough dollars to do what it is that you want us to do. That is not the case anymore. The state is sitting on a budget surplus of about $8 billion. I didn't say 8 million. I said 8 billion. The rainy day fund in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania totals $6 billion. The rainy day fund is in case you didn't know, is a fund that's put aside just in case there's an economic collapse in Pennsylvania and you have a bank account to go into to rescue the state's economy. Well, I'm telling you right now, if you're a victim of domestic violence, you are in hell. Your world is collapsing right around you, and this money should be put aside to fund the programs and especially to deal with the housing crisis for women trying to escape domestic violence. And that is the message, at least for me. Money should not be considered a roadblock to good policy that we're talking about here this evening. We've got the resources, and we've got the reason. The question is, do we have the will, the political will, to make it happen? I believe, looking around here, and my colleagues standing with us, which are just a small percentage of those individuals who want to make a difference on this issue, that we can get this done. Are you ready? Yeah. No, you don't sound like you're ready. Are you ready? Ready. Now, some of you were yelling at your TV screen last night when Schwarber hit that home run on the first pitch. I need you to yell like that. Are you ready? Yeah. Are we going to make this happen? Yes. Are you prepared to send the emails, make the phone calls, send the text messages, post on social media that we can get this done and these programs need to be fully funded, not partially funded, yes. Fully funded. Are you ready to do that work? Yes. There is a woman. There are far too many of them, and they have children at their side, who need us to step into the breach for them. I think we can get this done. And we are ready, all of us are ready, to lock arms with you to turn these dreams, these services, into reality. Let's go get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Now it's with deep gratitude that I welcome Mia Samuda. Mia has generously offered to share her story with us tonight and the impact that losing a loved one to domestic violence has had in her life. Please join me in welcoming Mia to the podium.
Thank you. Good girl, stay. Good girl.
Good evening. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm the last speaker tonight, so we should get warmed up soon. I met the woman who I would come to know as Kat when she called me about training her three-legged dog Achilles. He was loving and affectionate, a perfect companion for her, but he was also strong and independent. She didn't want to break his spirit, but she needed help making it easier for her and for her dad to safely give Achilles his best life. It's a perfect description of the very essence of Catherine Hartman. She was dedicated to making her family and the world around her harmonious, peaceful, and was simply a joy to behold. Kat was a beautiful soul. Inside and out, she loved flowers, not just looking at them or taking the time to smell them, but she marveled at the beauty of nature that made them come to be. It is no surprise that she embraced the study of horticulture while working at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. Kat was a perfect blend of science and art. Quite simply, she was harmony. She perfected this blend in her career as a registered nurse. Kat knew how to act quickly when necessary to save a patient's life. She also knew when to slow down and hold a hand when she knew that patient's time was coming to an end. Suffice it to say, my life was blessed when I was given the honor to train Achilles and to get to know her. She quickly became a dear friend of all of ours. She embraced pack life and intended to spend the rest of her life caring for and tending to her family, her dog, her patients, and spreading beauty and joy all around. In June of 2021, the world lost the beautiful life and soul of our dear friend, Catherine Hartman. Our friend was stolen. She was stolen from her family, stolen from her friends, her pack family, stolen from her patients, stolen in a cowardly act of domestic violence. Domestic violence has a ripple effect. Everyone knows someone. You may not realize it, but even you know someone in pain, someone living in fear, someone in danger. As for our friend Kat, the bullets that tore through her, releasing that beautiful soul, also hit everybody in her orbit. As her family reeled from the loss of their daughter, sister, aunt, her friends and co-workers grappled with the hole left behind in their lives, her patients lost a highly skilled and supremely compassionate advocate. We, her pack family, had to find a way to walk on without her by our side. We didn't want to overwhelm her funeral, and we took some solace in knowing that a wonderful new family had stepped up to love her beloved Achilles. However, we had a need to share our grief and a desire to make certain that his horrific act of domestic violence, his heinous crime, would not be her legacy. Personally, I felt compelled to make sure that Kat would not be forgotten. I wanted to know that others would remember her exquisite kindness, and they would say her name, Catherine Hartman. The catwalk to remember was born. I had never been fully aware of the prevalence of domestic violence until it disrupted my life. Until it hit so close to home, I had never thought to speak out against it. Losing our friend made it real. Kat's death is personal. We recently held our 3rd annual walk in memory of her, and we are currently in the middle of our 3rd annual campaign to raise awareness of domestic violence, as well as to raise funds for the coalition in an effort to help others escape a similar situation. We can't bring Kat back. We can't unbreak the hearts her loss has affected, but we can make her death shine a light in the darkness. I cannot let her become another tragic story people gossip about in hushed tones as if it was something shameful. If only she would have asked for help. If only I would have known then what I know now. If only I would have recognized the signs that she needed help. If only my friend would be standing here with us tonight. If only. We must do better. We must normalize talking about the pain before it's too late. We must make access to resources and safe places easier to reach. We must make everyone aware that domestic violence is real. It is not just a movie of the week. We must give victims the hand they might not realize they need. Everyone knows someone, and everyone can make a difference. Everyone can play a part in bringing an end to this crisis. It begins here. It is about opening our eyes and our ears and making a dedicated effort to speak. If we can do that, talk to one another, be noticed, and open our arms to those being abused, then my friend did not die in vain. Her beautiful spirit and soul will live in the lives that we can save. Most of all, people will say her name, Catherine Hartman. She won't be forgotten. We walk, we speak, we pray, and we advocate in most loving memory of Kat Hartman. Please turn on your candles and raise them, if you will, in silent memorial. I ask you all to say the name with me. I light my candle in memory of Catherine Hartman. Thank you. We now honor the 104 lives lost to domestic violence homicide in Pennsylvania in 2022. For From Allegheny County, Rochella Anderson, Rachel Dowden, Anthony Lofton, Vincent Roebuck, Travis Sanner, Robert Devon Williams, Rashid McCamey, Ibrahim Diallo, Sheree Newson, Darlene Harbison, Corey Washington. From Bedford County, Tyler John Mathai, Laverne Lockard. From Berks County, Jill Murray, Jackson J. Reyes Negron, Alexei Omar Rodriguez Serra. From Bucks County, Joseph Jamakowicz, Giovanni Galina, Gregory A. Kerman, Jeffrey J.T. Tinney, and Nelson Tinney. Please stand by. There will be other speakers with the rest of the names. I don't know where to go.
Samantha Rementer, Elizabeth Beth Capali, MC, Frederick Orr, Jaden Sanderson, Beth Ann Dilbert, Josephine Lauknor, Jennifer Prince, Ryan Prince, Kimberly Ortiz Zayas, Tyara Rodriguez Diaz, Jude Strock, Julio Cesar Perez, Tammy Edwards, Rosa Reyes, Eddie Shaw, Frankie Thomas, Jessica McCullough, Tamara Colbert, Meredith Green, Tyler Thomas, Carmen Henderson.
Audrey Maria Kellogg, Brian Cole, Deborah Sock, Kylene C. Kiefer Avey, Lynette Ayala, Nemesis Florentino, Courtney D. Cooper, Cecilia J. Leposki, Miles Brickhouse Jr., Victoria Nieves, Maria I. Guzman Rodriguez, Richard Novak, Grayson Evans Salazar, Cassidy Matulovich, Linda Taylor, Andrea Meek, Jerry Zering, Vicky Wenzel, Cheyenne Swartz, Megan Biore, and Leslie M. Baylor.
Deborah Sager, Christian Chambers, Sheila Gamble, Olivia Drasher, Keishla Arroyo Rodriguez, Dion Thompson, Harvey Harris, Tamara Cornelius, Tasana Jennings, Lisa Shuing Jennings, Josephine Dugan, Nasir Johnson, Nancy Roman, Anthony Ham, Benjamin McMichael, Michael Thomas, Jane Doe, Bertha Johnston, Ashley Lockhart, Denier Camp.
Elaine King, John Doe, Samira Garcia, Layla Al-Rahil, Wendy Feldman, Mesa Larkin, Ty Din, John Doe, Brierly Lorraine Walters, Kelly Wadsworth, Mecca Vaccaro, Kelly Steele. Judith Ann Schultz Hamburger Snyder. Tamara Deloach. Christine Fausick. Riley Reynolds. Sean Tran Pham.
Thank you, Representative Curry. And thank you to all of our guests who participated in our victim commemoration. Hi, I'm Deanna Dyer. I'm the Policy Director at PCADV. By reading these victims' names aloud, we honor their memory and our mission to end domestic violence for future generations. Hearing the names of all the people we lost last year is sobering, but it also strengthens our resolve to carry on this work that we do. We must continue to advocate for prevention and change on their behalf. I'd also like to thank all the special guests and supporters who joined us tonight. We appreciate our past partnerships and your efforts to champion Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October. It's our hope, though, that this is just the beginning, that awareness is just a starting point. Victims and survivors are counting on us to continue the work together across branches of government, across party lines, to continue to do the work to ensure that survivors are safe. We need to ensure that service providers have the resources required to continue their work. At PCADV, we envision a commonwealth where collectively we create a community that supports all Pennsylvanians and the human right to live healthy, stable, and rewarding lives free from domestic violence and all forms of violence and oppression. We know this vision is possible, but we can't get there alone. As we begin to close out this year's Domestic Violence Awareness Month Memorial Vigil, we call on you from every political affiliation and every branch of government to join us by investing the resources needed to make this vision a reality. Now, please welcome me in introducing the President of the Board of Directors of the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Joanna Otero Cruz. Joanna is the Executive Director and President of Women Against Abuse in Philadelphia, in addition to serving as PCADV's Board President. With a rich history of serving children, families, and survivors of intimate partner violence, Joanna oversees the implementation of PCADV's mission from both a strategic and operational standpoint. Joanna Otero Cruz is the recipient of many awards, including the Community Impact Award from the Hispanic Choice Awards, Philadelphia's Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award, KWY's Women Achievement Award, and the Aetna Healthcare Latina Leadership Award.
Thank you, Deanna and Susan and the incredible team at PCADV for putting this together. I'm truly honored to serve as president of Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. This is truly mission-driven work, as well as serving as president of Women Against Abuse, the largest domestic violence provider in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And even with that being said, you heard Senator Hughes say that oftentimes we are full and do have to say no to individuals who are in need. So I will not take too much of your time this evening. I just truly want to extend a thank you to all of you who have dedicated, and to all of our dedicated legislators who are here this evening, for all of you bearing the little chilly weather this evening as well, for raising awareness about domestic violence. But let us remember that our work doesn't conclude today. We must persist in our collaboration, in our advocacy, and when necessary, yes, our lobbying as well, to ensure survivors have the necessary services, the protections and resources they need. Together, we can strive for a future where domestic violence is no más, no more. Thank you so much for participating in the event this evening.